Hello everyone, this is Ken Elsoff again. This is the second video that I promised this online Facebook group for veterans. This is part of the 5 video discussion on how to improve your chances of getting a federal job. In this case, I'm going to discuss KSAs and job elements. KSA statements are well known. They are strongly disliked. There are a lot of rumors about them, and I hope to clarify a lot of them today. And we're also going to discuss the job elements, which are similar to KSAs, but more closely geared towards wage grade type positions. We're going to discuss these narrative statements and how they can help you increase your chances of getting a federal job interview. So there's quite a bit of content here today, so I'm going to jump right in and try to get through this as quickly and as smoothly as possible. So today we're going to define and discuss KSAs, essay-style statements that are submitted in federal applications. We're going to talk about the KSAs and job elements, the difference between the two. We're going to discuss the difference between knowledge, skills, and abilities. I'm going to show you some real-life examples of KSAs and job elements from live announcements that are currently on USA Jobs right now. I'm going to show you some sample KSA statements that have been submitted by applicants. I'm going to show you where you can go find a list of all of the approved job elements for any wage grade type positions. Wage grade are the trade positions in the federal government, the blue collar type work such as plumbers, locksmiths, electricians, and things like that. So the job elements are going to apply to them specifically. I'm going to show you how to format your KSA response, best strategies for laying it out. We're going to discuss what not to do. I've seen a lot of mistakes made when it comes to KSAs and narrative style responses. We're going to talk about the do's and the don'ts as a whole. And I'm going to show you some additional resources for learning more about KSAs. So who am I? I'm Ken Elsoff. I'm a former GS-12 HR specialist in recruitment and placement. Basically, I spent just under 9 years as a federal staffing and recruitment specialist. So I was the face on the other side of USA Jobs. I was the guy who built the USA Jobs advertisements, collected your resumes, screened them, sent them forward for interviews, and then worked in sometimes on interviews. But I did work on onboarding the applicants as well. So it was a full spectrum recruitment process that I was involved with for many years. And there are a lot of tips and tricks that I know, which is really the genesis for these videos. I worked for the Department of Veterans Affairs and Department of Defense. I was a recruiter for about 9 years. I am a Navy veteran. Go Navy. All right. So let's clear up the biggest myth of all, and that is that KSAs no longer exist. They have not gone away. They do exist. They are not illegal, and you should respond to them. A lot of the confusion came about on May 11th, 2010, when President Obama released a presidential memo to improve the federal recruitment and hiring process. That memo called for the federal government to stop requiring essay and narrative style responses during the initial application on federal jobs. This specifically is the statement in the presidential memorandum that has caused a ton of confusion. Eliminate any requirement that applicants respond to essay-style questions when submitting their initial application materials for any federal job. That's the exact quote taken from the presidential memo. The problem is the word requirement. The federal government can no longer require that you respond to KSAs when applying initially. However, that does not state that they cannot still have them in the announcement. That doesn't state that they are not highly encouraged. And it doesn't state that you should ignore them. They still exist. They just cannot be made a requirement. But I can tell you this, HR specialists and supervisors who are recruiting for positions are still looking for people to submit their KSA responses. They just simply cannot be made required up front. I'm going to click on this very quickly, this link, to take you to the presidential memorandum in 2010 to show you what exactly it looks like. If you go to Google and search that, Presidential Memorandum, May 11, 2010, it'll bring up the page for you. And this will show you exactly what was put into that memo. This is all about the hiring reform program that President Obama pushed for. There's some good information in here, but in the end, you really, really need to understand that KSAs still exist and do not ignore them. That's the whole point of this presentation. So KSAs versus job elements, what's the difference? All right, the KSAs, they're essay style statements which indicate what's needed to successfully perform a job. All right, so they're the special qualifications and personal attributes that you need to have a particular job. These are then extracted from the job description and placed into the announcement for you to respond to. All right. The primary purpose of KSAs is to measure those qualities that will set one candidate apart from another. And here's the key. It primarily applies to jobs that are in the general schedule, GS jobs. All right. That's predominantly, that's the majority of positions in the federal government. Job elements are the same thing, but they are primarily geared towards wage grade employees. Those are the blue collar employees. But it's still looking for the same knowledge, skills, and abilities for these type of positions. And I'm going to go over those in a little bit, but it's primarily wage grade. So KSA is for GS employees. Job elements are for wage grade employees, depending on what kind of job you're looking to apply to. That would be what's going to be in your announcement, whether it's job elements or KSAs. Very, very minor difference, but they're both in the announcement. So if you're reading an announcement and you see the word job elements, you'll know that those are the KSA type statements that you need to respond to in paragraph format. So what does knowledge mean? Well, obviously, that's an organized body of information, typically of a factual or procedural nature, which makes adequate performance on the job possible, right? This is what you know. This is the knowledge that a person must have in order to be successful in a particular job. The skill, that's actually referring to proficient manual, verbal, or mental manipulation of data or things. That's what you can do. That's the skill set, the physical requirements, really the physical type requirements required to perform the duties in the position, such as typing or drafting documents, or editing for transposed numbers, for example. Ability, all right, this is referring to the power to perform an observable activity at the present time. This means you're capable of doing the job. Ability to plan and organize work, for example. So here are some sample KSA statements that you might find in job announcements, and we're going to look up a few here shortly. The ability to perform mathematical operations. That means that in order to be successful in that job, you have to have the ability to perform mathematical operations. It's pretty clear cut. You can most often identify these KSA statements by the first word of the sentence. Ability, ability. You can see there D is knowledge of. The rest are ability to. This is an example of 6 different KSA statements that may be in an announcement, and these are the statements that you need to write paragraph responses to or massage into your resume. But you have to address these 6 criteria in your resume. I'm going to film another video here shortly on resume writing and resume building, and it's very, very important that you address all 6 of these items inside your resume or in addition to your resume. The point of the KSA statements is, think of them as the supervisor telling you what they're looking for. This is why you have to customize your resume and your application to each job you apply for, because one advertisement that has these 6 criteria may not be the same as another announcement, even in the same job field, because another announcement might be from a different supervisor who's looking for different things in their applicants. So the KSAs are the supervisor's way of telling you what they're looking for and therefore how to customize your resume. So let's go look at some live examples. I just jumped on USA Jobs myself right before this to verify that these announcements are live, that they exist, and that KSAs are present. So I want to show you, this is an example of a job announcement for a medical support assistant. This one is with the VA, but that's not the point right now. As I scroll down here through the announcement, I'm looking for the phrase KSAs, or I'm looking for a whole bunch of sentences that begin with knowledge, skill, or ability. And here we are right here. This is real life. This is what's up right now on USA Jobs. These are the things the supervisor is looking for from applicants. These are the things that need to be in your resume. You have to respond to these in order to have your resume get you through to an interview. If you ignore these and you submit a generic resume that you submit to a variety of different positions, chances are you're not going to get an interview. You have to customize it using these things right here, or you have to respond to each one of these statements with paragraphs. Typically 3 to 5 paragraphs for each KSA statement. We'll discuss the content of those paragraphs shortly, but the point is you have to respond to them, whether it's in paragraph format or inside of your resume. For the sake of time, I'm going to skip the middle one, jump down to the bottom one. This is an example of a live HR specialist advertisement. Again, on USA Jobs, I'm going to scroll down until I see knowledge, skills, and abilities. And here they are right here. In this case, they're only using 4 of them, 4 statements. And I spotted them by the first word, knowledge, skill, skill. They didn't list any sentences that begin with the word ability, but these are still the same ones that you need to respond to. These are what the supervisor is looking for. You have to address these. Now let's take a quick look at some examples of job elements. Again, these are wage grade positions for job elements. These are blue collar type positions that are currently advertised on USA Jobs. I'm going to click on plumber. Here's an example of a plumbing advertisement currently up. I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to look for the job elements. And here we are. Knowledge of, ability to. These are the things you have to address either in your resume or separately. What's interesting about wage grade positions is when they have a job element listed, they discuss screen out elements. A screen out element is one of these KSAs that's very specialized, and if you don't meet it or don't demonstrate it at all, they can immediately eliminate your resume and your application from consideration. So screen out element is very, very important, and you have to address it. And it says right here, failure to meet the screen out element means you're going to be ineligible. You have to take time to read the announcement so you can see what the screen outs are. And here it is right here. This is telling you this is a KSA right here. It's a specialized KSA, although it's not bullet pointed. It's specialized, and you have to indicate that you do have this experience. Otherwise, your resume will not go forward. For the sake of time, I'm gonna skip the second one too. Here's an example of a wage grade foreman. There we are right there. Job elements. Ability to, knowledge of. You have to address these sentences if you're going to apply to this position. If your resume does not mention these things, you will not get an interview. You will be weeded out. Typically, the top one is the screen out element. which is why it says it right here. If you do not respond to this sentence in your resume or in a separate document in a paragraph format, you will be weeded out. This is a screen out, meaning the HR specialist can eliminate your resume if they don't see that you responded to anything that has to do with this work right here, this ability. It's very, very important. That's why a lot of people get weeded out, because they miss that detail and they don't address that KSA, and that gives the HR specialist the opportunity to eliminate you and not have to waste any more time on a resume that hasn't been customized for the job. Lucky for you, when it comes to job elements, again, this is for wage grade jobs, blue collar jobs. If this is what you're after, the government actually has a list of approved job elements that HR specialists have to use inside of their announcements. This is where you can find them. I clicked on the link. It's taken me to an OPM website, and it is for the federal wage system, right? The GS positions. And I'm going to click on this tab right here, list of approved job elements. And this is going to tell you what job elements can be used for all of these blue collar career fields: industrial, warehousing, food prep. And if I scroll down here, it's going to give me a list of all of them that can be used in those advertisements based on the job series, the group of work. The screen out elements that are listed here can be used by the HR specialist to weed you out. They typically only use one of these screen out elements. They can randomly choose which one they want to use based on what the supervisor wants, but this is how HR specialists look to remove your resume if you don't address these things. Another way you can do it is just search online for OPM approved job elements. That'll take you to that OPM page we were just at if you want to do this on your own. Here's how you can structure your KSA responses. For each one of those knowledge, skill, and ability type statements, you can respond to it in paragraph format by structuring your statement following the CCAR format. Meaning, you describe a particular challenge, a problem that you faced that needed solved. Then in the next paragraph, you would talk about the context of the situation. What are the other factors? How many people were you with? How many people were on the team that you led? Okay. What were your goals? What were your challenges? What were your changes in conditions and requirements that needed to be met? And then in the next paragraph, you would describe the action that you took, what steps you took personally to solve the issue, to solve the challenge from the first bullet point. The last one is the result. The last paragraph in your KSA statement should describe what's the result. What difference did it make? Was it successful? Did it save money? Did it accomplish something no one else had accomplished? Did it blaze a new trail, develop a new process? Did you save money or time? So you can actually structure your KSA responses using this format. Each one of these bullet points can have its own separate paragraph, or you can put them all together into one paragraph. But following the structure, it allows you to fully and completely respond to the KSA statement that's in the announcement. And this is what the specialist is going to look for. It's going to look for, did you respond to each KSA statement individually, and did you do it completely? And when I say completely, they're looking for this structure: challenge, context, what action you took, and what was the result. And if you have a bunch of examples to give for each KSA, that's okay too. I've seen people respond with 5 pages for each KSA. They wrote 5 pages worth of paragraphs in an essay style to highlight all of their experience and challenges that they encountered in that addressing that particular KSA, and then wrote 5 pages for each one. So they're submitting, if for example there were 5 KSAs, they would be submitting a total of 25 pages worth of essays responding to those KSA statements in total, and that's submitted in addition to their resume, their federal resume. This is an example of a KSA response. Somebody used this result, this CC, Yeah, CCAR strategy. Got my letters mixed up. Apologize on that. I am not going to read this to you for the sake of time, but you can pause the video and read these if you want to see some examples. This is in response to a KSA that says ability to communicate orally. That means it's an important part of the job to be able to communicate orally, and here are some ways that a person could respond to that KSA. Again, you can pause the video right now and read these if you want an example, but I'm not going to read them and dissect them. For the sake of time, I'm going to move on. Here's what you don't want to do. Do not ignore them. They exist for a reason. It's the supervisor handing to you on a silver platter exactly what they're looking for, so you must respond to them. Do not copy and paste parts of the announcement as your KSA response. If you copy and paste the duties from the job advertisement into your resume or into your KSA statements, the HR specialist is going to weed you out because you didn't do any of the work on your own and you demonstrated laziness. I've seen people submit KSA responses just by simply responding with the word yes to each KSA. They wrote yes behind each KSA statement as though we are to understand that they had that experience. Do not do that. Lay out all of your experience, lay out your CCARs, lay out your list of tools you've worked with or experiences you have had, a list of all the documents you've prepared. If, for example, a KSA requires you to have the ability to write or communicate in writing, make lists, make paragraphs, put as much information in there as you can. There are no length requirements, but you want it to be relevant. Do not simply write the word yes as a response. Do not be vague. Always use specifics. Do not use words like dedicated, self-motivated, dependable. They don't prove anything and they're opinion statements. Talk about what you have done and what you have accomplished. Do not borrow full sentences from the position description, job description, duties description, or occupational questionnaire that's in the announcement. If the HR specialist catches you doing that and not using your own words, they can pull your resume. So the question is, should you submit KSA statements in addition to your resume? And the answer is it depends. You can create a whole separate document, Word document with your KSA responses and submit in addition to your resume, or you can massage your KSA responses into your resume. Keep in mind, there is no length requirement on federal resumes. So you can have a 20-page resume if you want and if you need, and if it's relevant content, that's okay. I'm going to have another video on resume writing shortly, and you'll learn that. If I were drafting, so the question is, how would a federal HR specialist create a KSA reply using insider knowledge? And by insider knowledge, I mean based on my experience as a federal recruiter. If I were going to write KSA responses, I would first extract keywords from the announcement, keywords from the duty section, keywords from the questionnaire, and those would form the basis for my KSA responses. Whenever you can use keywords from the announcement in your KSAs or in your resume or in both, do it. I would also visit this website called ONET Online. ONET Online is a great place to go and get some KSA type statements and information. I'm going to show as an example here plumber. I'm going to type in plumber here and click search. And ONET has a list of all sorts of occupations. And when you click on a particular occupation, in this case I'm randomly picking plumber, this website shows you what sort of skill sets, knowledge, skills, and abilities that plumbers have. And this provides excellent content that a person could take and use inside their resume or take and use inside of their KSA. KSA statements. And as you can see right here, it's actually laid out in a knowledge, skills, and abilities type format even. So these are a lot of statements with a lot of good keywords that you can pull out and put into your KSA statements if you're having a hard time coming up with content. Again, that's onetonline.org. That's a great site to go and get keywords based on your experience. I would create an outline using all of the keywords that I got from these two places, the announcement and ONET Online. And then I would convert all of those keywords into paragraphs. I would write paragraphs, statements around all of those keywords so that the keywords are nice and embedded inside my KSA response and inside my resume. And I would add some bullet points in there. So, for example, if I were a plumber, I would talk about experiences as a plumber, and I would list all of the different types of tools I've used as a plumber. I would highlight different challenges that I've encountered as a plumber. And so you can use lists in addition to your paragraphs, is my point. Here are some tips. Read the vacancy announcement carefully. Gather the information you need. I just went through that. Be very, very specific and use numbers whenever you can. Be precise. Get to the point. Don't ramble. Make sure your KSA doesn't go off topic and you're truly addressing each KSA statement or job element statement that's listed. Don't ramble. Quantify when you can. How much money did you save? How quickly did you get it done? How many people did you supervise? Use numbers as much as you can because it helps put things into context for the specialist who's reading them. You're not restricted to using only one example. Your KSA response can have multiple examples for each KSA. You can write as much as you want. So long as it's relevant, do it. Again, state specifically what you've done. Be careful on using acronyms, especially with, for example, when I got resumes for IT positions, it was somewhat dreadful because I didn't understand all the acronyms that IT specialists use. It was hard for me to understand it as an HR specialist, what all of the acronyms meant and whether somebody was qualified or not. So try not to use acronyms because it's an HR specialist who's reviewing your resume, not an IT specialist, for example. So you've got to communicate to your audience. Use clear and plain language. Try not to make it too complex or try not to make it sound too high level. So where can you get help writing your KSAs? A lot of unemployment offices across the country have veteran representatives. They are often trained in coaching people on how to write KSAs and federal resumes, so they are a free resource that's available. You can go to Google, for example, and search for Veterans Benefits Administration offices. Find your local VBA office. They often have veteran hiring reps or veteran employment representatives that can also help you with KSAs, also a free service. This is a site right here that lists all of the county veteran service officers throughout the country. You can pause the video now and write this down. But it breaks it down by state. It's a pretty good list. I only encountered it the other day, and I have not verified for accuracy on these, but I thought it was a pretty handy collection. National Care Planning Council, State and County Veteran Service Officers, and you can click on each state, and it will pull you in and show you where your veteran services officers are, and they can help steer you to job resources on and where you can find help writing your KSAs. I have heard of people submitting a Freedom of Information Act request to agencies, requesting under the Freedom of Information Act a list of all of the applicants who have applied to a job in the past, and getting a copy of the KSAs of the person who was selected for the position the last time it was advertised, because the person who was hired last time obviously wrote their KSAs correctly, and the government can release those to you, but you have to go through this formal Freedom of Information Act request to get a hold of somebody else's KSAs that they've submitted and were successful with. There's a lot that goes into that, so I'm not going to cover that in this particular presentation, but just know that it is possible, and people do it in order to get samples of successful KSAs so that they can utilize them in their next application. Often colleges have veteran assistant reps, veteran employment coordinators. They can also help you with KSA and resume writing as well. All of those services are free, by the way, so take advantage of them and get some help writing the KSAs if you're not very good at doing it yourself or you're having a hard time. If you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to me through Facebook. You can send me a private message. I do have a lot of them in the queue right now, so it may take me a few days to get back to you, but I will get back to you. And I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was helpful. Remember, always respond to the KSA statements in your resume or separately in a separate document, but do it. Otherwise, it's going to decrease your chances of getting a federal job interview if you ignore those KSA statements. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next video.